has been a little over 2 months since Superstorm Sandy pounded the United States, and there are still so many questions, including the storm's damage to the environment. Joining us now is Lilo Stainton, the Harbor Coalition Campaign Director for New York and New Jersey. We thank you for joining us here at Ebru today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the first concern, of course, with any storm is first the human suffering and making sure that everybody's safe. But now we're starting to look at the long-term effects on the environment. What can you tell us?
Exactly. I mean, 2 months later, you're 100% right. We still have people who are trying to get their power back and trying to find long-term shelter. So that is certainly the primary concern. But the Harbor Coalition and a number of other environmental advocacy groups are starting to look at what that rebuilding looks like. You know, some of the solutions on the table, options on the table, are things like building giant seawalls or tidal gates. But we're suggesting that you need to also look at the natural solutions, as you call them, sort of the soft solutions, which could be adding a wetland or adding oyster reefs or barrier islands, things that actually will absorb some of the water and slow this storm surge when it comes ashore.
Well, and I was going to say, if you have a seawall, you would have to have a seawall extending the entire length of the United States.
Exactly.
You know? I mean, where does the water go?
Exactly. I mean, you know, there are ideas about building seawalls. These are billions and tens of billions of dollars, this infrastructure. So, you know, maybe it's a combination of smaller seawalls and softer solutions. You know, that is really going to be up to a fleet of experts, which are obviously looking at these options right now. I think the bottom line is, though, that it's going to require significant resources.
Well, I was just going to say, you're going to need some green there to make it a green. And
exactly,
so,
exactly.
What do you think is going to happen in terms of this? I mean, we're waiting for Congress to vote on this. Where do you think?
Exactly. So Congress is today actually looking at voting on the flood insurance portion of a solution, but they're also looking at providing, you know, upwards of $50 billion to do other types of rebuilding. Now that's a whole suite of things, from organizing communities to be able to better respond to creating infrastructure, subway systems and response systems that are more storm resilient. But it's also, how do we deal with these next storms in the future? And there will be storms. How do we create an environment that really can absorb this water instead of pushing it somewhere else?
Well, and it's a great question. I mean, we haven't had a storm like this in 100 years.
Yeah.
Yet we're getting the storms are stronger and stronger each year, it seems. So.
And there was one 14 months before Sandy. So these things are coming more and more frequently. And we've seen, you know, that the federal government in this country does have a very important role to play. And they have. I mean, as you know, after Hurricane Katrina, which devastated the Gulf, the government really stepped up and provided resources to do long-term solutions, as well as refunding all the funds that have been laid out by local and state municipalities.
Well, they came up with some solutions for the New Orleans area, but you know, a lot of folks are saying, you know, this is so widespread. You have areas like Staten Island that are very urban. Then you have the shore communities of the Jersey Shore. Yep. What do you think? I mean, if you could say, okay, I'm going to go decide, what would you propose?
It's got to be a mix. I mean, unfortunately, there's no either or. In our region, we need to do, some things will require literally hardening the structures and making sure that the infrastructure is out of harm's way when it comes to water and wind. Other things will require sort of softer or more community organizing solutions. I mean, part of what's been found in this country is when people have networks, when they're not alone in their homes, they have a better chance of survival. And I mean, in Staten Island, it's a terrible story, but people literally drowned alone in their homes. Yeah. And that's, you know, we need to avoid that, whether it's building protection, whether it's creating a natural environment that can absorb this better, which is what the Harbor Coalition is looking to do, or whether it's creating a more robust community response where we can work together and address these things.
And certainly some of those stories are just heartbreaking when you hear and report on them. But I want to talk about some of the softer solutions, because some folks may not fully understand how an oyster bed could actually help. Can you explain that?
Oysters are remarkable little creatures on their own. They literally filter the water and reduce the amount of pollution in the water. But they also, when you create sort of a structure underneath the water like that, it literally breaks up the wave strength. When the waves come ashore, they don't hit with such force. And then when you create softer solutions like wetlands or barrier islands, that can actually absorb the water. I mean, you think of a sponge. A sponge will absorb the water and take and remove it from the area around around where it is. And that's exactly what we're looking to do, to protect those communities that are on the coast. Or, you know, we have a lot of coastal communities with bays on the other side along the Jersey Shore. Those bays are excellent locations for wetlands. We obviously have to keep shipping channels open. This is a multi-billion-dollar port, but we need a suite of solutions.
And very quickly, I want to just ask, long-term environmental concerns, what might they be?
Well, we have seen, I mean, there was tremendous amount of pollution that we don't know if there's a long-term damage, to be clear, but there were overflows of sewage treatment systems, there were petroleum spills. There will be impacts. How serious, we don't yet know. I think that the important thing is to look forward and know that this is going to happen again, and know that we have to do more to address this so we don't see the same multi-billion-dollar level of destruction with people literally drowning in their homes the next time around.
Well, thank you so much for your insights, Lilo Stainton. It was a pleasure to see you here. We hope you come back.
Thanks for having me.